Hello everyone, welcome back. What we are going to learn in this video is how to create AKS cluster in Azure Cloud, and once the AKS cluster is set up, how to deploy Spring Boot application into AKS cluster by building Azure Pipeline. It's a very simple use case. We are going to learn how to set up the AKS cluster in Azure Cloud. Once the cluster is set up, we will be deploying Spring Boot application into AKS cluster using Azure Pipeline. Awesome. So let's quickly go over the agenda. As part of the prerequisites, yes, we need to have AKS cluster set up, and we will learn how to do that in a minute. And then we need to have a Spring Boot application along with a Dockerfile and Kubernetes manifest file. So I do have them over here. So this is the sample Spring Boot application. I have a Docker file which we are going to use to create the Docker image. And then I do have Kubernetes manifest file which we are going to use for deploying into AKS cluster. We will discuss about this file as we move along in the video. All right. So what we are going to do as part of the demo, we are going to create the AKS cluster using Azure CLI, and then we will also create ACR repo in Azure Cloud. So this is used for storing the Docker image. And then we will verify the Kubernetes manifest file entry before deployment, because whatever the ACR entry you have, we need to modify this file, right? And this is the Docker image tag, right? So everything has to be in order before we can start deploying. And then we will create a build pipeline, which is going to check out the code, build the Docker image, and then upload the Docker image into ACR. And then we will also create release pipeline, which is going to deploy that Docker image or Docker container into AKS cluster. And finally, we are going to access the Spring Boot application just to verify, everything is working fine or not. Okay, awesome. So let's get started. This is my website, coachdevops.com. I will be posting the link right below the video as well. Okay, so let's look at this use case in detail. So this is the Spring Boot app, what I talked about. So we have already stored this in GitHub. It is available in GitHub. We also have a Docker file. We already saw that. We have a sample Kubernetes manifest file as well, right? And then we are going to build Azure Pipeline, which is going to check out from GitHub. And we are going to do a Maven build, because if you look at the Docker image, we need to have jar file created, right? So we are going to build that using Maven, and then we are going to build the Docker image. We are going to tag it and then push the Docker image into Azure Container Registry. And then finally, we are going to create a release pipeline, which is going to download the image from here and then deploy into Docker container. For that, we are going to use Kubernetes manifest file. We are going to use this one. Okay. So very simple use case. Spring Boot application checked in into GitHub. We are creating Azure Build pipeline to check out the code, build the Docker image, upload the Docker image into ACR, and then we will create release pipeline, which is going to deploy the Docker container or Docker image into AKS cluster. Awesome. So let's get started. So if you look at the prerequisites, yes, we do need to have AKS cluster set up. So if you look at here, there are many ways you can create cluster. Okay, so you can directly go into Azure portal and create AKS cluster, or you can create AKS cluster using Azure CLI command, or you can also create AKS cluster using Terraform as well. But I'm going to go with the simplest option, which is to use Azure CLI. And we will talk about that in a minute. And then if you look at other prerequisites here, right, we also need to have ACR. So we will also do that in a minute. And then we need to have access to Azure DevOps dashboard. So I do have my Microsoft account setup, which is actually not here, which is here, right? So this is my Azure DevOps dashboard. And then we already talked about the Dockerfile. And then we need to make sure AKS has pull access from ACR so that AKS can download the Docker image from ACR during the deployment. And then we will modify this entry as well, right? So we will cover one by one. Okay, awesome. So let's first create the cluster. So like I said, I'm going to go ahead with CLI option. You can also learn other different ways as well. So if you actually go to my channel, so this is my channel homepage. So click on the search box, and then if you type AKS and then enter, it's gonna show you different ways of creating AKS cluster, but I'm going to pick up the one which is using Azure CLI. Okay, so this is what I'm going to do. So this is the instruction for that. The reason why I have chosen this is, it's like one command, just like one single command, which is actually going to create the cluster for you, right? So that's the reason why I'm going to go with this option for this particular demo. Awesome. So let's get started. So let me open up my item here. So first of all, we need to log in into Azure. Okay, but before that, we need to make sure we do have Azure CLI installed. I do have Azure CLI, and you can verify that by entering this command. So I do have Azure CLI installed. Okay, so let's first log in into Azure portal. Okay, so this confirms that I have logged in into Azure cloud. Once you select your user credential, perfect. And then let's go ahead and create this resource group, because as you know, anything you create in Azure cloud, it has to be part of a resource group. So first I want to create the resource group, and I would like to use South Central US. So let's go ahead and then create the resource group. There you go. So resource group got created. And then we can go ahead and then create AKS cluster with 2 worker node. Okay, again, it is up to you. You can create as many you want. So I want to create a cluster. This is a cluster name with 2 worker node. And then yes, I also want to enable monitoring and then generate SSH keys as well. So let's copy this command. So let's go ahead and then create AKS cluster. So this may take 3 to 4 minutes depending on the internet speed. So I'm going to pause the video and then come back. All right, so the cluster got created. And if you like to know the details of the cluster, so we can use this command, AKS show command. So this will give us some information in the command line. And if you like to see it in the Azure portal, we can actually go there. Click on resource groups. So this is the resource group what we created. There you go. You see here? So this is the cluster name, right? And if you like to see how many nodes are there, we can click on node pools. There you go. Nodes. There you go. You see here? So we have 2 worker nodes here. Perfect. Very good. So let's continue. And we also need to create ACR as well. This is where we are going to go ahead and then store the Docker image. So let me clear the screen. So let's copy this. Make sure the ACR name is unique. Otherwise, it is not going to create. Awesome. So right now the ACR also created. Perfect. And then we should be able to see that over here as well. We go to resource group. We refresh. It might take a couple of seconds. There we go. You see here? So this is the container registry what we just created. Perfect. Very good. So now what we are going to do, we need to update the kubeconfig. The way we are going to update that is by executing this command. So if you see here, as you can see, the kube config has been updated. Okay, perfect. So now what we should be able to do, we should be able to perform kubectl command. So let me go ahead and then say get nodes. So this should give me the worker node. Perfect. And then if you like to look at how many namespaces are there, so these are like, the namespaces available for our AKS cluster. Perfect. And then if you want to deploy anything, let's say if you want to deploy any like Nginx or anything like that, you should be able to deploy. That's pretty straightforward. But before that, let's go ahead and then update our AKS cluster so that we should be able to attach the ACR, right? Because what we need to do, we need to give ACR full access for our AKS cluster. Okay, so let's go ahead and then perform this command. So this is going to update our cluster. So this is the cluster name what we created, and this is the resource group name, and this is the ACR what we just created. So let's copy this command. There are many ways you can give permission to your AKS cluster in order to download the image, but we would like to do this way. Okay, this might take a few seconds. Let's see. Okay, so that activity is done. Perfect. So let's go ahead and then clear the screen. Great. So we set up the AKS cluster, we created ACR. We also gave full access to AKS cluster to download image from ACR. So everything is looking good, and then our worker nodes are running. Perfect. If you want, you can go ahead and then deploy this Nginx app, but I'm going to skip that step. Okay, perfect. So let's get back to our original page here. So we took care of this. We also took care of this as well. So now what we can do is we can go ahead and then create a pipeline, right? We can go ahead and then create a pipeline, especially the Azure Build pipeline for building the Docker image and then uploading the Docker image into ACR. Perfect. So let's get started. So I'm going to go back to my project dashboard. So click on pipelines and click on new pipeline. So we are going to go with the classic option. Okay, of course, you can also build a pipeline using AML code as well. I'm planning to put that video, in a week or two, but let's go with the classic editor. Our project is set up in GitHub. So make sure you already established connectivity between GitHub and Azure DevOps. Okay, if you see here, I have already established. So I'm going to click on these three dots. And I'm going to, there we go. So this is the repository. Click on Springboot app and then select. And then this is the branch I would like to use. So click on continue. So now what we are going to do, we are going to choose the template, because the goal of this build pipeline is to build the Docker image and then upload the Docker image into ACR, right? So if you see here, this is what we are actually going to use, right? Or you can also type, when you look for Docker, look at that. So this is exactly what we wanted to do, right? So we want to choose this particular template. So click on apply. Awesome. You see here now the pipeline got created. Okay. And then if you want to choose the agent, you can choose any one of the agent. Let me go with the Ubuntu latest. Okay, so now we are going to start customizing our pipeline. Okay, but before that, let me first name the pipeline here. Rename the pipeline. I'm going to say my awesome Springboot CI pipeline. Okay, perfect. All right, me save. Don't say queue because we need to add a few other stuff. So I just saved it. Okay, perfect. So now, so these are the two tasks, right? It like pre-populated, okay? But if you see, we need to have a task to build the jar file, isn't it? So I'm going to click on this plus. I'm going to add a task, search for Maven. and then I'm going to select this one. Okay, sorry, this should be here. I'm going to move this to the top because you need to build the jar file before you can, build the Docker image. Okay, and then I'm going to click on the three dot. If you see here, our pom.xml file resides, yeah, I think it is in the root of the directory, so you don't have to worry about that. If you go here, there you go, you see here. So I'm fine with that. So this is fine, and then goal is also fine. You can do clean installer package, that is also fine, perfect. So that's it over there. And then let's add here, let's modify this task. So we need to provide Azure container registry information. So let me click on Azure subscription. Okay, so I'm gonna go with this one. Okay, first time when you do it, it may ask you to enter your Microsoft credential. If it asks, go ahead and provide that. I'm going to say something like this. See, when you choose like this, it will ask you to click on this option. It will ask you to enter your Microsoft credentials when you do for the very first time, right? I have already done it, but I'm just showing you again. And then I'm gonna say approve from my authenticator app. Okay, so this already exists, that's fine. So that's why I got that error, but I'm going to go with one of the options. Okay, perfect. And then let's go ahead and then enter or select our ACR information. There you go, you see here. So this actually comes from Azure portal, right? So perfect. That's it. I don't think we have to do anything here. And then if you look at the image name, the way it is going to create the image name is build repository name and then build ID, right? So that would be nothing but, so this is the repository name. Okay, and then it is going to add the build ID as a tag, right? So that's what it is going to do. So this is fine. You can leave it like that, that's fine. Okay, and then click on push an image. So again, we have to do the same thing. Select the ACR repo. Perfect. Okay, and if you like to include the latest tag, I mean, you can do that if you want to tag it. Okay, that's fine. That's it, right? So far so good. And we also need to add a couple of more tasks because what we wanted to do is, after you build the Docker image, we also need to go ahead and deploy the Docker image into AKS cluster, right? So for that, we need to add a couple of more tasks. So let me first add this task, which is nothing but copy. So I'm going to add this task. Okay, so if you see here, what I'm trying to do, if you click on the dots, so I want to, add this Kubernetes manifest file as part of the build itself, right? I want to, add this file as part of the pipeline itself so that the YAML file will be copied into a drop folder and your release pipeline can use that file for deployment. Okay, so as part of the contents, what I'm going to do, I'm going to just mention the file name. So go ahead and then mention the file name. Perfect. And then where it is going to copy, so you can click on this I and then mention that. So it needs to go to the artifact staging directory, so you can just mention like that. Perfect. Okay, all right. And then let me also add one more task because you need to publish it, right? You need to publish it. So let's add that. And then we're going to say publish build artifacts, add. Okay, so this one, I think everything looks good. You don't have to modify anything. And this is going to copy the file from whatever is available in the artifact staging directory into a drop location. Perfect. I think we are good here. Okay, all right. So let's go ahead and then save and queue. And let's see what is happening. I'm going to say save and run. So right now it is in the process of getting an agent from the cloud, and it's going to go ahead and then start the build process. Let's see. Awesome. As you can see here, Docker image has been built and it also tagged perfectly fine. The repo name, right? And then this is the build ID. Perfect. Oh, we have some issue with pushing the Docker image. Oh, okay. I think let's go back to the pipeline. I think we missed one step. Oh yeah. Okay. I thought we already selected this. Push an image. Let me see. I think let me go back to the pipeline one more time. Oh, tag does not exist. Oh, okay. Yeah. If you see here, I have selected the latest tag, so that is not there. Okay, I think I know what is happening. Yeah, if you see here, I have included a latest tag, but when building, I did not build with the latest. So if you want, you can just include this one. Okay, so this is fine. All right, so that's fine. Let's go ahead and then say save and queue. So we are going to build the Docker image one more time. There you go. So now we are also able to see the latest image as well. Perfect. So we are able to push that. That's a good one. Okay, awesome. So now the image has been successfully built, and then we also able to upload into Azure as well. So if I go to Azure portal, if I click on the repo, if I click on the repositories, there you go. So we should be able to see the Docker image tags, right? There you go. You see that? So we also build with the latest tag, and then we also build with the build ID. The reason why we see two entries here, because our first build got failed and then it created another build, right? And then this is what that one. Okay. So perfect. So far so good. And then of course you can click on any one of the image and then you can see. And if you want to pull the Docker image, so this is how you're going to pull. This is the latest Docker image, latest tag. And if you want to pull a specific tag one, this is how we are going to pull. Okay, perfect. Awesome. So let's go back to our instruction here. So if you see here, we successfully built the Docker image by building Azure Build pipeline. Now what we have to do, we have to create the release pipeline for deploying Docker image into AKS cluster. But before we do, so remember we talked about the Kubernetes manifest file. So we have to make sure that we do have proper entry, right? So if you go back to our ACR, so the way we are doing it is, so look at here, right? So we are tagging the Docker image with the build ID, right? And if you look at the Kubernetes manifest file, look at that. So we are also doing that as well, right? So whatever the build ID, it has been tagging from the Azure Build pipeline, and during the release pipeline, it is going to pick up this, and then it is going to replace the build ID dynamically, right? From the variable, right? So this is like a, what do you call, predefined Azure DevOps variable, right? Which are nothing but, see, this is your build IDs, right? So we will see that during the deployment. Okay, I think we do have everything set up. Perfect. And then this is for the services, right? So this is for deployment. And then this is for exposing the Springboot application as a load balancer, right? So perfect. All right, so why don't we go ahead and then create the release pipeline? So let me go to pipelines. And then here I'm going to go to releases. So let me create a new release pipeline. Okay. So let's see, click on new and then say new release pipeline. Okay. So I'm going to choose the template here. So let's see here. Okay. So this is what we wanted to do, right? Look at that. Deploy to Kubernetes cluster. This is exactly what we want to achieve. Okay. So let me select this one. There you go. So the tasks have been added here. Perfect. And then let's rename our release pipeline. I'm going to say my awesome, Springboot, not CI, this is CD, or release pipeline, whatever you want to do that. I'm going to say my awesome Springboot CD pipeline. Perfect. Save. Okay. Perfect. So now let's click on the artifact. So we have to link our drop location, right? So if you remember, we have created a Docker image and then we also published our Kubernetes manifest file during the build itself, right? So we need to link that. So click on add. Okay, and then we need to select our pipeline name. I believe this one, right? My awesome Springboot CI pipeline. So just select that one. Perfect. Okay, I think that's it. Okay, perfect. So it got added here. So let me click on the stage name. Here I want to say deploy to AKS. Okay, perfect. And then click on the task. So these are the tasks. So if you see, right, we want to deploy into Kubernetes cluster, and then we want to, leverage the build ID, right? So what we are going to do, we are going to add a task here. I'm going to say token. So I'm going to add this task called replace tokens. I'm going to move this to the top. That's very important. It should come before kubectl apply. Okay. And then here, click on the three dots. We have to choose. Wow. That's interesting. I don't see the drop location. That's very interesting. Let me see. Wow. Wow. Do you all see the mistake what I have done? I did not close the bracket. So that's the reason why the drop folder was not there. Wow, very interesting. Sorry about that, guys. We have to build this one more time. So while this is building, we can also see the previous build. Right, so this is the previous build. Click on releases, artifactory. Yeah, see, there's nothing got published. Okay. Yeah, there you go. See here. So nothing, because I made a mistake. Okay, that's fine. So that's good to know. So here we go. Finally, we see something. Okay. I think we should be able to see that over here. Artifactory. Not there. Published. There we go. Yeah. So there we go. So this is what we need. Okay. Very good. So let me go back to the release pipeline. So my awesome Springboot CD pipeline, edit. There we go. Over here, yep. Click on the root directory. Fantastic. There you go, guys. Okay. So this is what we need, but you need to just choose the directory name. Don't select the file, just the directory name. Perfect. And then the file, you're going to mention the file name, right? So that is nothing but this one. So perfect. And rest everything you can leave it as it is. If you look at the token pattern, and this is the pattern we follow, right? So we are good with that. Perfect. Okay, I think so far so good. And then let's go to the kubectl task. So this is where we are going to connect with AKS cluster, right? So we need to create a service connection. So let's click on new. Okay, we need to provide Microsoft credentials. Let me approve in my phone through Authenticator app. Perfect. Okay, so now it should be able to show the cluster. So this was the cluster what we created. Perfect. And then you can select the namespace. We did not create any namespace. I'm going to go ahead with the default namespace. And I'm going to say some name here. I'm going to say my AKS cluster since is June. I'm going to say June 2022. And then you might want to grant access to all pipeline. So you need to select this one. You don't have to use this one. You don't have to. So I'm going to leave that unchecked. So that's it, right? So basically we choose the Azure subscription, selected the cluster name, selected the namespace name, and then we are entering the name for our service connection, and then click on save. Perfect. Okay. And then here we can go ahead and then mention the namespace name, which is default. And then in the drop down, what command we want to perform. So obviously we want to say apply, because this will be like a kubectl apply and then whatever the file name, right? And then this will go ahead and then deploy into AKS cluster. So click on use configuration file, and then we have to provide our file name, right? So which is actually nothing but this one. Okay, so let me just make sure the syntax is correct. Let me go back to my instruction here. So apply, yeah, configuration file, yeah, that's it. Perfect. Okay. All right. Very good. I think that's pretty much over there. Okay. All right. So let's save this. I'm going to say created CD pipeline for AKS deployment. Okay. Perfect. I think that's pretty much over there. Let's go ahead and then save this. Okay, so saved, and then let's go ahead and then create a release. So click on create release. Click on create. There you go. So release got created. So now let's see. So click on the logs. This will take a couple of seconds. It is waiting for the agent. Okay. There you go. So this is very important, right? So it replaced the build ID, right? Okay. And then if you look at the next task, kubectl apply. There you go. So it says that deployment got created and then service also got created as well. This is great. Perfect. So let's go back to our item. Okay, so now I should be able to use the kubectl command, right? So obviously we have 2 worker node, and then if I say kubectl get pods or get deployments first, there you go. See here. So we are able to see the deployment. The reason why you see 3, because I do have 3 replicas. There you go. You see here. And then if I say get pods, we should be able to see those 3 pods as well. Perfect. Okay, and you can see here, right, like 49 seconds ago. And then if you like to see the service, okay, so that's the service. Perfect. So before that, let's actually go ahead and then check the log. So kubectl logs and then provide the pod name. There you go. So let me expand this. So as you can see here, so this is the log for one of the pod. So as you can see here, it started the Springboot application, right? It initialized, and then as you can see here, it is actually up and running, right? Started. Perfect. Okay, and then of course, we were looking at service here. So if you see here, we are exposing our service as a through load balancer, and we are going to hit that using this external IP. And I'm going to say call and then enter that IP. So this should give me some output, right? And of course, I can also go to browser and then check the output. Let me go ahead and then enter that. Oops, sorry, that's wrong. Let me. So we are going to use this IP. Wow, look at that. Of course, I do have some browser restriction here. Perfect. You see that? So this is our Springboot application deployed in AKS cluster. And then if you want, you can enter some name. Okay, and then there you go. And then if you want, you can enter a few other name, you know. There you go. All right. So yeah, so that's it, guys. You know, that's how you would set up your AKS cluster and then deploy your Springboot application, which is your microservice, into AKS cluster using Azure Pipeline. Thank you for. So before we close, make sure, you know, you are deleting your cluster. If you keep your cluster up and running, obviously you will be charged a lot of money, right? So the way to fix that is you can go ahead and delete your resources, right? So you can execute this command. So this will clean up everything what you have done. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and then execute that. So when you do that, so everything will be cleaned up. Okay, so don't forget that. So this will take care of, you know, cleaning up your cluster. Awesome, guys. I hope this was really useful to you all. Thank you for watching this video once again. Appreciate that.